He was not born to be king. There was no royal blood in his hands, no throne waiting for him, no great family standing behind him. He was a bandit, a poor man's son, the boy they laughed at in the market. So when he finally reached out and took the crown of Ethiopia, he did not take it because it was given to him. He took it because he tore it out of other men's hands. And the day he put that crown on his own head, he made a promise to fix a broken country, a promise to make Ethiopia great again. But he also made another promise, a darker one, a promise that he would do it no matter who he had to break, no matter how much blood he had to spill. And that is where everything begins to go wrong. The great lords of Ethiopia had laughed at Kassa for years. They called him a rat. They called him the son of the kosso seller. They were so sure he was nothing. They stopped laughing very quickly, because Kassa came for them, one by one. He marched his army out of the wild country, and he began to fight the most powerful men in the land. And he beat them. He beat them again and again and again. Lords who had ruled for years with big armies and fat treasure rooms watched their soldiers run from this poor man's son. How did he do it? He did it because he was smarter than they were and hungrier. The old lords fought the old way. They were slow, they were proud, they cared about their titles, their fancy clothes, and their family names. But Kassa did not care about any of that. He moved fast, he struck hard, he appeared where they did not expect him, and most of all, his men actually loved him. The Lord's soldiers fought because they were paid. Kassa's men fought because they believed. And his army kept growing, because everywhere he went, the poor people ran to join him. They were tired. They were tired of the burning. They were tired of the stealing. They were tired of hiding. And here at last was a man who came from the bottom just like them, a man who promised them peace, a man who promised one Ethiopia. Lord after lord fell, army after army broke, and soon there was only one thing left standing between Kassa and the throne of Ethiopia. And then that fell too. The great powerful families were finished. The puppet emperor on his straw throne was pushed aside like an old chair. And now the poor boy from the market, the bandit from the bush, stood in front of the crown of Ethiopia with nobody left to stop him. So he took it. In a great church, before the priests and the people, the son of the kosso seller was crowned emperor. And on that day, he did something bold, something that told everyone exactly who he thought he was. He threw away his old name. Kassa was gone, and in his place stood a man with a new name, a name pulled straight out of an old story that every Ethiopian knew by heart. For hundreds of years, the people had passed down a prophecy, a promise. They said that one day a great king would rise, a king who would end all the suffering, a king who would drive out Ethiopia's enemies, unite the land, and bring back the glory of the old days. And the prophecy gave that coming king a name, Tewodros. And so, standing there with the crown on his head, the boy they had laughed at looked out at all the proud nobles who had mocked him, and he took that holy name for himself. I am Tewodros, he said. Not just an emperor, the emperor, the chosen one, the king from the prophecy. Now think about how bold that is, a man from nothing telling the whole country that he was the king God had promised them. Some people believed him with all their hearts. Some people were angry, but nobody could ignore him. And at first it truly looked like the prophecy was coming true, because Tewodros had big dreams, beautiful dreams, and he got straight to work. He looked at Ethiopia and he saw all the things that were killing it, and he tried to fix them all. He looked at the greedy lords and he said, "No more. No more little kings, no more private armies, one country, one emperor, one law." He looked at his own soldiers and he saw the problem. For years, soldiers had fed themselves by robbing the farmers. So Tewodros said, "No more. No more stealing from my people. My soldiers will be paid properly. My soldiers will not burn the villages of my own countrymen." He looked at the cruel old customs and he tried to end them. He wanted to stop the slave trade. He wanted judges who were fair. He wanted roads built so the country could be joined together. He wanted a real modern army, trained and organized, not just a mob of angry men. He wanted his people to be proud again. And listen, this was not a foolish dream. This was a great dream. This was the dream of a man who had been poor, who had been hungry, who had been laughed at, and who wanted to make sure that no other child would have to grow up in a broken country like he did. For a moment, Ethiopia dared to hope. But then the cracks began to show. Because here is the terrible truth about Tewodros. He had a great dream, but he had no patience, and he had a temper. He wanted Ethiopia to change today, right now, this minute, and when people did not move as fast as he wanted, something inside him began to turn dark. The lords he had beaten did not stay quiet forever. As soon as he turned his back, they rebelled. He would crush one rebellion in the north, and another would rise in the south. He would ride down to crush that one, and the first one would rise again, over and over and over. And every time it happened, his anger grew hotter. He began to punish people harder, then harder still. Villages that helped rebels were burned. Prisoners were treated with terrible cruelty. The man who once protected poor farmers from soldiers was now watching his own soldiers hurt those very same farmers. Then he turned on the church. Now, understand, the church in Ethiopia was rich and powerful. It owned huge lands, and Tewodros needed money to pay his new army. So he took church land, he took church money, and he told the priests to stop growing fat while his country was starving. Maybe he was even right, but it was too much, too fast, and too angry, and now the priests were against him as well. So now count his enemies. The lords hated him, the church hated him, and little by little, the people who once cheered his name began to fear him instead. The man who came to save Ethiopia was slowly becoming the thing Ethiopia was afraid of. He grew lonely, he grew suspicious, he began to see traitors everywhere he looked. His friends were leaving him, his soldiers were slipping away in the night, and still he would not let go of his dream. If Ethiopia would not be united by love, then he would unite it by fear. But Tewodros was not finished. He had one more idea, a big one. He believed that if his country was ever going to be strong, it needed modern things, modern guns, modern machines, modern knowledge, the kind of power the white men across the sea already had. So he made a decision that would change everything. He decided to write a letter to the most powerful person in the world, a letter to the Queen of England, Queen Victoria. In it, he asked for her friendship. He asked for skilled men to come and teach his people. He offered his respect as one ruler to another. He sealed that letter with hope, and he sent it far across the sea. And then he waited, and he waited, and he waited. To be continued in Part 3. Don't go anywhere, because in Part 3, that letter is going to sit in a room in England, unopened, unanswered for years, and when the proud Emperor of Ethiopia finally realizes he's been ignored, His rage is going to make him do something so shocking, so dangerous, that it will bring the greatest empire on earth marching to his door.